You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. I gotta start with the Pinstripe Bowl. I was right. It was a tough game to get into. I was right that it was kind of disinteresting, but wow, I did not see Maryland blowing Virginia Tech out. I mean, for goodness sake, the Terrapins outscored the Hokies 30-0 in the second half. All throughout this game, Maryland really looked like the superior team. You had the punt return touchdown in the first quarter, the bomb to Darryl Jones right after the field goal. Then you've got the last drive of the first half where Virginia Tech makes it 21-10. Maryland's able to drive down the field to make it 24-10. I mean, right there you had the sense that this just wasn't the Hokies' day. Now, remember when I said that I liked Taulia Tagovailoa? He just needed some help if Maryland was going to be better? Well, he got it. He got it from Darryl Jones, who had 4 catches for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. And his defense was obviously outstanding. Every Terrapin starter, with the exception of TJ Cowtie, a middle linebacker, finished this game with a Pro Football Focus grade of at least 64. It's easy to win when you have your defense playing like that, limiting Raheem Blackshear, limiting Connor Blumrick. I mean, I'll tell you, if the Terrapins' defense had played like that all throughout the season, Maryland would have been a lot better. Taulia Tagovailoa is a very talented quarterback. You saw it yesterday. The guy completed 20 of 24 passes for 265 yards and 2 touchdowns. He added 4 runs for 42 yards. The issue with Maryland was that they were a one-man team this year. They were expecting Tagovailoa to win games by himself. That's not easy to do. See what happens when you give him some help? See what happens when you have a wide receiver show up and you have a defense show up? You can destroy your opponent. Games like that on a week-in, week-out basis is the ceiling for Tagovailoa. He's that good. It was a coup for Mike Locksley to convince Tagovailoa to leave Alabama. Like I said, Mike Locksley is a very talented recruiter. Maryland really should be better next year. They've just got to get good performances from people not named Taulia Tagovailoa. That's going to be Locksley's biggest challenge in the offseason. Figuring out who can step up and help the Terrapins take that next step. They have the quarterback to do it. They really do. Tagovailoa is the guy. He just needs a good supporting cast around him like his brother had at Alabama. Moving on now to the Cheez-It Bowl. By far and away the best game that we got yesterday, which really surprised me. I mean, these were two teams that I was really low on. ISU should have been better. Clemson should have been better. They're going at it in a non-marquee bowl game. It's still important. It's not a game you can throw away. But certainly Cyclones and Tigers fans expected better from their teams before the season started. And look, while this game was exciting, it was close, it wasn't like a game for the ages or anything. The final score was 20-13. Like, you saw the shortcomings of both teams in this game. You saw DJ look really bad. The guy completed 21 of 32 passes, which is good. Okay, there's no question about that. But it was also for only 187 yards. He wasn't responsible for any touchdown, and he threw a killer interception that gave ISU life late in the third quarter. DJ's yards per attempt was under 6. This guy is not good. I mean, before the season, I was looking at 2023 mock drafts. You know who first overall was? DJ. You look at those same mock drafts now, you can't find him. There's a reason for that. I mean, I thought this guy was terribly overrated last year. If you'll recall, he started 2 games last year because Trevor Lawrence got the coronavirus. So DJ started against Boston College. Clemson won that game 34-28. It was a game that Clemson really should have won a lot easier. They were down 28-13 at the half. They came storming back. Give DJ credit for that, but it was not a convincing performance. Then you lose to Notre Dame. I understand that Notre Dame was a really good team that year, and it went into double overtime, and DJ was good in that game, but still, that was a game that a lot of people expected Clemson to win. Let's put it this way. When Notre Dame played Clemson with Trevor Lawrence under center, Clemson won 34-10. There's a reason for that. A, Trevor Lawrence was a great college quarterback and is going to be a great player in the pros once the Jaguars get their act together. And B, DJ is completely useless. This is your guy, a guy who completed under 55% of his passes. barely threw for over 2,000 yards. If not for Dabo Swinney, this guy would be clueless. I mean, he doesn't look that good now, but at least he looks sort of kind of competent. Without Swinney, he'd look like a Bishop Sycamore player. Remember that? I was actually just watching something on Bishop Sycamore. What a crazy story. But ISU couldn't take advantage of it. Why? Because Breece Hall didn't play. If Breece Hall had played, the Cyclones would have won this game. But Brock Purdy had to throw the ball almost 40 times. That's not going to end well for the Cyclones. He wasn't awful. He completed 23 of 39 passes for 204 yards. He threw a touchdown. And the interception that he threw was just a crazy play. It was deflected at the line. It pops up in the air. Purdy tries to spike it down to the ground, but instead he ends up tipping it to Mario Goodrich of the Tigers. It was a crazy play. I'm not going to get on Purdy for that. He wasn't awful. I mean, he did lead ISU to a nice second half comeback. Like, after that interception that resulted in a pick six, made the score 20-3, you got this sense that ISU was just going to keel over and die. Clemson was going to run away with it. You could turn the game off. The Cyclones did mount a little bit of a comeback. Now, granted, they were helped by the DJ pick, but still, it was 20-6 at one point. Then Clemson went 3 and out. Then the Cyclones went on an 8-play drive to make it 20-13. So we've got a game here. Now, the end of the game featured one of the craziest moments I've ever seen. And this was a terrible job by Purdy. This is why he doesn't run. There are some quarterbacks that no matter what, you really don't want him running the football. Purdy's one of those guys. It's 20-13 Clemson, 42 seconds left, 4th and 2 at the Cyclones 36. Purdy drops back, pumps, and runs for the first down. Now he gets it. He gets the first down. But he sees one of the Tigers converging on him from his right. So he runs to the left. He tries to play hero instead of just sliding down and taking the first down. He wants more. What happens is Mario Goodrich, who was by far and away the MVP of this game, it was like the easiest selection for MVP that you could have possibly had. And Goodrich did win MVP, so give the voters credit. I'm just saying it was an incredibly easy decision. Goodrich forces the fumble at the Cyclones' 41-yard line. Remember, it was 4th and 2 at the 36. So all Purdy needed to do was get to the 38-yard line. He got there and then some. But Goodrich forced the ball out of Purdy's hands. the ball ends up bouncing to the 36-yard line. So yes, Purdy had ran for the first down, but because he fumbled it and he recovered the ball at the 36-yard line, it goes in the books as a turnover on downs. Clemson wins. Now, in all fairness to Purdy, Jalen Noel needs to do a better job of blocking on that play. When you see Purdy running for it, you've got to seal off Goodrich. You've got to give your quarterback a lane to work. If you block Goodrich and Purdy runs left, I don't want to say it's a touchdown, but it's a great play for the Cyclones. Instead, Noel did nothing. Literally did nothing on the play. Look, the seminal reason that play didn't work was Purdy not going down. You got the first down. You extended the game. Just take it. Don't try to be a hero. If you're not used to running the football and you're trying to play hero in that moment, that's what can happen. You can fumble the game away. But Noel does need to do a better job of sealing off Goodrich. Once you see Purdy cross that line of scrimmage, if you're Noel, you need to make a beeline for Goodrich and do whatever you can to stop him from getting to Purdy. Instead, you just do nothing. There are some players who, in big moments, will just get lost and they'll watch. That's what happened with Noel. Like, Purdy's decision to try to get a little more wasn't a terrible decision. You see the Tiger coming at you from the right. There's no one coming at you from the left. So what are you going to do? You're going to run left. I mean, if Noel executes, it's a huge play for the Cyclones. It's a big chunk play. And you give ISU some life. So while I understand the logic, at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to get the first down. You don't need to get everything back at that moment. You got the first down. Just fall to the ground and then spike the ball. You've got 3 plays to get 10 yards. It really wasn't an intelligent play by Purdy. It was a bad job by Noel. Give Mario Goodrich a ton of credit. Without him, the Tigers lose this game. Although if Breece Hall had played, ISU would have won this game. Here's the big question I have, though. Matt Campbell has an outstanding reputation. I mean, here's a guy who has gotten NFL buzz. When the Jets fired Todd Bowles and Adam Gase, the Jets wanted to interview Campbell. He turned them down twice. According to Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports, before the Lions hired Dan Campbell, they offered Matt Campbell an 8-year deal worth $68.5 million. I'm not going to get into the whole college coaches will never work in the NFL argument. More often than not, they don't. Sometimes you hit a home run, but more often than not, they bust. I'm not going to get into that argument. I'm just going to say that we need to change our opinion of Matt Campbell. People call him a great coach. I've heard people say that he'd do a great job in the NFL. I don't think so. I haven't seen enough from Matt Campbell to make me think that he's great. He has one great year. Last year, when the Cyclones went 9-3, and they beat the Ducks in the Fiesta Bowl. I'll call that a great season. But this wasn't. This was a disappointing season. This is your golden boy? This is the next young, hotshot head coach that's gonna make the jump from college to the NFL? Oh, come on. We've got to do better than that. You want to say Dabo Swinney? I'm okay with that. You want to say Luke Fickell? I'm okay with that. I could even make an argument for Ryan Day. Not Matt Campbell. I'm not saying that Campbell's a terrible coach. He's not. He's just not a great coach. So I don't want to hear him as a head coaching candidate in this cycle. I want to see him get ISU right. Then maybe, just maybe, I'll change my opinion of him. And even then, I don't know if I'll do that for sure. Moving on now to the Alamo Bowl. Oklahoma had a seemingly insurmountable 30-3 lead, but the Ducks did mount a pretty impressive second half comeback. They outscored the Sooners 29-17 in the second half. Ultimately, Oklahoma was able to keep Oregon at bay, and they won Bob Stoops' return to coaching the Sooners. Let me ask you something. Does this reignite the fire in his belly to coach college football? Bear in mind, he wasn't fired or anything like that. He just retired. He had coached Oklahoma for 18 seasons. He had accomplished a ton. Made it to a national title game. Has the most wins in Oklahoma history. Has the most bowl wins in Oklahoma history. Went into the College Football Hall of Fame. He had nothing left to accomplish. But you gotta wonder if this win, if being on the sidelines again, reignites his passion for coaching. I mean, he's on the older side. He's 61. Colleges usually like to hire young up-and-comers, but at the end of the day, you could do a lot worse than hiring Bob Stoops. I mean, I gotta be honest with you. It wouldn't surprise me if Urban Meyer's name was mentioned in the college football coaching cycle. He'll never coach in the NFL again. He will never have anything to do with the NFL again. But I don't think he's going to want to end his coaching career with his failed year in Jacksonville. I think he would go back to college football. I mean, if you'll recall, I was really critical of Lincoln Riley's decision to go from Oklahoma to USC. Supposedly the reason was that Riley didn't want to coach in the SEC. You don't think you can hang with the big boys? That tells me all I need to know about you. You're not a great coach. Great coaches can hang in the SEC. I mean, Riley's been linked to the NFL. So let me get this straight. He's going to take over an NFL team, but then when he faces the Chiefs or the Buccaneers or the Cowboys or the Packers or a team like that, he's going to leave? Come on. That's pathetic. There's no question about it. Oklahoma looked better yesterday than they looked in any game this year. To beat a really good Oregon team as convincingly as they did, that's impressive. Would Riley have done that? We'll never know. But I'll say this, he lost to Baylor and he lost to Oklahoma State. Two ranked teams. He played Texas when they were ranked. He beat Texas, but Texas finished the season by losing 6 of their last 7 games. They really weren't that good. I can't read much into that win. I mean, I don't want to say that Lincoln Riley's a bad head coach. He's not. His resume speaks for itself, and at the end of the day, I do think he's going to do a great job at USC. Granted, less competition, but still, nothing's stopping Lincoln Riley from running the Pac-12 for the next 2 decades. He could have a Pete Carroll, John McKay, or Howard Jones type run at USC. I mean, this guy never finished with more than 2 losses. Obviously, the quarterback whisperer with Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts. He's a very good coach, but at the end of the day, him leaving Oklahoma because he didn't want to deal with the SEC, and seeing how Oklahoma played yesterday, that's telling to me. That means something. Again, not saying that Lincoln Riley's a bad coach. He's not. But I don't think he's great right now. Can he become great? The answer is yes. Is he there right now? The answer is no. Alright, now it's time to preview today's bowl games. I'll start with the Duke's Mayo Bowl. South Carolina going up against North Carolina. It's not too often that we get rivalry matchups in bowl games. But make no mistake about it, there is a rivalry here. It's not like the UNC-Duke rivalry or the Michigan OSU rivalry. These teams have only played each other 5 times this century, counting this game coming up. But there was a time when UNC and South Carolina would play each other every year. South Carolina, once upon a time, was in the ACC. In fact, the main reason that they left the ACC was because South Carolina felt that the ACC favored the Tobacco Road schools more. They looked at South Carolina as the other Carolina. So South Carolina was independent for 20 years. Then they joined the SEC. Now, granted, while they were independent, they did play UNC. Not every year, but more often than not, they played each other. But once they joined the SEC, that was it. It really didn't happen a lot. So it's nice to see the organizers of the Mayo Bowl coming together and putting a really interesting rivalry in their game. And yes, the winning team's head coach will have Duke's mayo dumped on him. Just like Dabo Swinney had Cheez-Its dumped on him, either Shane Beamer or Mac Brown will have mayonnaise dumped on them at the end of this game. Here's my question. Is that mayonnaise going to be refrigerated? This game is going to be in Charlotte. It is set to be 65 degrees in Charlotte this morning. I know some people don't refrigerate mayo until it's opened. I personally refrigerate my mayo the second I get it. Like, it's mayonnaise. It can turn very quickly. We've all had bad mayonnaise at least once, right? You're making a sandwich, you don't realize that the mayonnaise that you're using is past its prime, and you bite into it, and it's like, oh! I guess I'm having pizza. I mean, I like mayonnaise. In fact, sometimes for lunch, I'll have, like, a cold cut, a cheese, some tomatoes, and some mayo in a sandwich, and I'll call that lunch. Tell me anything that's wrong with that. But if that mayonnaise turned, I don't want anything to do with it. You can't leave that mayonnaise out there just waiting to dump it on your coach. If you want to keep it on ice, that's fine. Okay, I have no problem with that. But you run into an issue. Mayonnaise, and I'm laughing because I'm talking so much about mayonnaise. Oh, you gotta love it. A sports talk show that's devoting a significant amount of time to talking about mayonnaise. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about ketchup, my favorite condiment. But the thing is, mayonnaise by nature is very viscous. Like if you have a jar of mayo and you turn it over, it's not all gonna come sliding out. You need to work at it to dump it out. So unless Shane Beamer or Mac Brown is just going to stand there for a little bit while the players try desperately to dump mayonnaise on them, this isn't going to work. Unless you want to water the mayonnaise down, but that sounds disgusting. No, you know what you do? I'll tell you what you do. Instead of dumping it on them like Gatorade, you get spatulas. Everyone grabs a spatula, you put the mayonnaise on the spatula, and you try to hit the coach with the spatula. I mean, that's the only way this is going to work, right? How are you going to dump mayonnaise on someone? How are you going to keep it from turning? These coaches better be good sports, let me tell you. The thing is, though, like, now I really want to try Duke's Mayo. I don't know if it's sold in a supermarket near me, but I'm seriously gonna look for it. I've never had it before, had honestly never heard of it before this bowl game, but I really want to try it. Like, that's why you pay for this sponsorship, to get new people to try your product. Give the Duke's Mayo people credit. They know what they're doing. From a publicity standpoint, this is a home run. But on to the game itself. I'm not going to talk to you about the Gamecocks offense. You don't need to know anything about their offense. They put up only 21.3 points per game. That is the 109th best mark in the nation out of 130 teams. But they are a really talented defensive team. Like, give Clayton White credit. He's done a really good job as Gamecocks defensive coordinator. You think about guys like Kingsley and Nogbaray, Cam Smith, Darius Rush, Jalen Foster, Carlins Platel, Jordan Birch, and Jordan Strachan. These are some really talented defensive players. Meanwhile, you look at UNC, they are the polar opposite. All offense, no defense. Their offense this year put up 36.4 points per game, 15th best mark in the nation. Their defense gave up over 31 points per game. You want to talk about why Sam Howell, a really talented quarterback, only went 6-6 this year? It's because his defense really didn't help him out. I mean, he put up 34 points against Notre Dame, but Notre Dame dropped 44. He put up 30 points against NC State, but the Wolfpack scored 34. Let me tell ya, I'm a big Sam Howell fan. At this very moment, and this can change, my top 6 quarterbacks are Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral, Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, and Carson Strong. I mean, let me tell you, if Sam Howell was taken in the mid to late first round, I would not be upset at that. The thing with Howell is he had a great sophomore season. Completed over 68% of his passes, threw for over 3,500 yards. He was airing the ball out like crazy. 30 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. You wanted him to take a big jump this year. He didn't. He regressed hard. Completed under 63% of his passes. Threw for 2,851 yards. 23 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. But he ran the ball a lot more. Howell had 825 rushing yards this year and 11 rushing touchdowns. So yes, Howell's passing numbers went down, but in an NFL that is more kind to mobile quarterbacks than it's ever been before, Howell really refined his game. I mean, I love Sam Howell. I'm going to be really interested in seeing what he does here against a great Gamecocks defense. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. There is no quarterback in this draft that I would take in the top 10. Top 15, yes. Top 10, no. The thing is, though, quarterback-needy teams reach. You know that the Texans would be tempted to take a guy like Pickett at 3. You know Washington would be tempted to take a guy like Pickett at 9. Are the Giants truly sold on Daniel Jones? Are the Panthers truly sold on Sam Darnold? Quarterback-needy teams reach. I wouldn't even rule out the possibility of a team trading up. Could you see a team like the Broncos try to move up? We've heard the rumors that the Browns aren't sold on Baker Mayfield. Given what he did last week, I understand why. Could the Browns be aggressive? Could the Steelers be aggressive? Big Ben is nearing the end of the line. It's going to be interesting. But I don't want you to think that the Tar Heels are a one-man team. They're not. Ty Chandler is a really talented running back. Came over from Tennessee and had a really good season. Ran for over 1,000 yards. Had 13 touchdowns. You know how many touchdowns he had in his 4 years with the Volunteers? 13. Josh Downs had an excellent season. He caught 98 passes for 1,273 yards and 8 touchdowns. Defensively, they're lacking. There's no question about that. They have some solid players. I like Raymond Vohasek. I like Tomon Fox. I like Giovanni Biggers, but they're not fantastic. The thing is, though, South Carolina doesn't have the offense to take advantage of it. They didn't have a quarterback throw for 1,000 yards this year. They didn't have a quarterback throw for 9 touchdowns. They didn't have a running back run for 600 yards. They didn't have a receiver have 700 receiving yards. Having a Swiss cheese defense makes you vulnerable, but if the opposing offense is bad, I don't see how that really turns into a huge issue for UNC. I'm going to go with the Tar Heels here in pretty convincing fashion. Moving on now to the Music City Bowl. We have Purdue taking on Tennessee. Yeah, Tennessee is playing in the Music City Bowl. You gotta love how the organizers of that bowl game came to that decision. Purdue was a really good team this year. I don't think anyone expected Aiden O'Connell to have the year that he had, but he was really good. Completed 73.5% of his passes for just under 3,200 yards, 23 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. He was really good, and he had no running game helping him out. What he had were two really talented wide receivers who unfortunately won't be playing in the Music City Bowl, David Bell and Milton Wright. Bell is preparing for the NFL draft, and Wright has some kind of an ailment. So yeah, this is a short-handed Boilermakers team. But the one thing that will help O'Connell is the Boilermakers O-line. They have an excellent O-line. Greg Long, Spencer Holstead, Gus Hartwig, Tyler Witt, and Eric Miller form a really, really good unit. So I don't want to say that it doesn't bother me that Bell and Wright are going to miss this game, but I like that O'Connell's going to have an O-line blocking for him that will allow his lesser receivers, guys like Jackson Anthrop and Payne Durham, and guys like that, to get open. Lord knows they'll need that time. Defensively, the best player on Purdue is George Karlaftis, but he declared for the NFL draft. He's not going to play in this game. Without him, Purdue's defense falls off a cliff. I mean, Karlaftis did a lot for the Boilermakers. You take him out of the equation, that Purdue defense is going to fold like a cheap suit. I mean, let me tell you, I like Karlaftis. I think he's going to be a really good player in the NFL. But without him, that Purdue defense is going to turn into Swiss cheese. Hendon Hooker is going to have a field day. Hooker is one of the best two-way quarterbacks in the nation. Virginia Tech didn't really let him throw the ball a lot. He went to Tennessee and Josh Heupel took the training wheels off. Hooker had an excellent season. Completed 69% of his passes, threw 26 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, averaged 10 yards per attempt, also had 561 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. He was a great dual threat this year. And Hooker will play in this game. That's basically been decided. Never say never, but odds are he's going to play. He has some really good wide receivers to throw to in Cedric Tillman and Velus Jones Jr. They both had over 50 catches. Tillman had 931 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. Jones had 722 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. The Tennessee offense this year put up 38.8 points per game this year. That was the 9th best mark in the nation. And defensively, they're solid. They're not great, but they're not terrible. They have some good players, guys like Alante Taylor, Theo Jackson, Matthew Butler, and guys like that. But Tennessee was really middle of the pack this year defensively. All in all, with no Wright, no Bell, and no Karlaftis, I don't see how Purdue wins this game. I think it'll be a close game. I think Aiden O'Connell will have a good game, but it won't be enough. The Volunteers will win in front of a very, very, very pro Volunteers crowd. Nashville is not that far from Knoxville. Moving on now to the Peach Bowl. A game that I'm going to have a really tough time watching. Because the best player on both teams is out. Kenny Pickett's preparing for the NFL draft, as is Kenneth Walker III. Without Pickett, the Panthers' offense has no chance. Without Walker, the Spartans' offense takes a massive hit, but Peyton Thorne's not a bad quarterback. And Jaden Reed is a really talented wide receiver. Let me ask you something. If you don't begrudge players for sitting out bowl games to preserve their draft stock, how do you feel as a fan right now? You want to watch the Peach Bowl. A bowl game with a very rich history. You see two top 12 teams going at it. Great, fantastic. Let me sit down on the couch, crack open a beer, and watch a great college football game. Then you realize that Pittsburgh's without their starting quarterback, who's probably going to be the first quarterback off the board in the NFL draft, and Michigan State is without their best player. Aren't you disappointed? Doesn't that make you upset? Doesn't it make you upset that you're going to have to watch a bowl game with an incomplete roster? And this has nothing to do with COVID. These are players saying to their team, sayonara. It takes me off to no end. I can't get excited about this game. I just can't. Michigan State is going to win because they can withstand the absence of Walker. Peyton Thorne is good. Jaden Reed is really good. Pittsburgh cannot withstand the absence of Kenny Pickett. He is the only reason that they went 11-2 this year. People are making a big deal out of Pat Narduzzi facing Michigan State because he was their defensive coordinator before he took over at Pittsburgh. That's not the big story here. The big story here is the selfish actions by Kenny Pickett and Kenneth Walker III. In a weird way, though, I guess they kind of cancel each other out. Like, if you're Pittsburgh, you're without your best player, but Michigan State is also without their best player. So, maybe it cancels itself out? I don't know. But I don't see how Pittsburgh wins this game. I can't get into it. I'm going to have a really tough time watching it. Give me the Spartans. A game that I can get into, though, is the Las Vegas Bowl. ASU versus Wisconsin. Firstly, I always get a kick out of seeing Herm Edwards coach. I liked Edwards with the Jets. He was the first Jets head coach that I really remember watching. I always thought he did a really good job with the Jets. Did not do a good job with the Chiefs. But I always thought he did a good job with the Jets. Secondly, if you like old school smash mouth football, ground and pound football, we're going to run the ball down your throat and there's nothing you can do about it, you're going to love this game. Jaden Daniels is not a good quarterback. Neither is Graham Mertz. Boy, oh boy, did I get him wrong. But boy, oh boy, are their running backs talented. Rashad White had 1,000 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns. He also had 43 catches for 456 yards and a touchdown. He was actually their second leading receiver this year. And look, Daniels can get the job done with his legs. Had 670 rushing yards this year and 6 touchdowns. You just don't want him throwing the football a lot. Meanwhile, you look at Wisconsin, their offense revolves around Braylon Allen. He had over 1,100 rushing yards this year and 12 touchdowns. No Chez Mellusi, though. He has a knee injury. Mellusi was a big part of what Wisconsin did earlier in the year. He had 815 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. Paul Chryst is really lucky that Allen was able to come in and fill Mellusi's shoes. Defensively for the Sun Devils, you've got to look out for Jack Jones, Tyler Johnson, DJ Davidson, Darian Butler, DeAndre Pierce, Michael Mattis, Anthony Cooper, Merlin Robertson, etc., etc. The Sun Devils had the 24th best defense in the nation this year in terms of opposing points per game. They gave up under 21 points per game. Meanwhile, you look at the Badgers, they had the 6th best defense in the nation in terms of opposing points per game. Gave up just under 16.5 points per game. Leo Chenal, Jack Sanborn, Nick Herbig, Caesar Williams, Noah Burks. These are incredibly talented players. I think this is going to be a really good game. We've got a really good coaching matchup here. Obviously, I just told you Edwards' resume, but Paul Chryst has a good resume too. He's been with Wisconsin since 2015, has only lost 1 bowl game. He's done a really, really good job at his alma mater. I could see either team winning this game, but ultimately I like the Badgers' defense more than I like the Sun Devils' defense. They just have more star power. So I've got to go with the Badgers. Until tomorrow, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.